and welcome. I'm Kim Denyas, a spiritual director in Easton, Pennsylvania. We are looking at Genesis. We're right around the 24th, 25th chapter today. And Isaac is in need of a wife. Abraham calls his chief servant to him and says, I want you to go back to our homeland and find a woman for my son. One of the first concerns from the chief servant is, what if this woman doesn't want to come back? Could I then take your son to her? Abraham is very clear, and we hear him recount God's covenant with him. And he says, no, that's not an option. Swear to me that you will bring her here, and this because this is the land that God has promised me. Now, connected to that, you'll recall, is also a multitude of people, as many as the grains of sand, is what we're going to be told. A blessed people, so that they in turn will be a blessing, and one God. One God, one people, one land. That's kind of the essence of the covenant. So the chief steward heads back to mid-Turkey, again, the 500-600 mile journey, in search of a woman. It's a beautiful moment as we see this servant ask God, the God of Abraham, he says, to intervene. He kind of maps out a little scenario that if God would provide a woman at the well that would offer him water and would also offer water to his 10 camels that he brought. Well, before he's done speaking, the text says to us, Rebekah, who will become Isaac's wife, approaches him and offers him water, and also takes it upon herself to water the camels. He immediately, as soon as the camels are finished drinking, he takes out gold. Now, he's brought numerous gifts. Abraham is wealthy. He's brought livestock. He has brought clothes. He has brought jewelry as gifts. He immediately takes and puts on her, or maybe in her, because one is a nose ring, and 2 bracelets. Now, these are heavy pieces of jewelry. The weight that is used is shekel, and a shekel weighs about 11 grams of gold. Now, my wedding band is quite thick and happens to be right around that 11 grams of gold. The shekel, it's a half a shekel nose ring that she is given, and then the 2 bracelets are 10 shekels total. When we get to Joseph and he's going to be sold, his brothers are going to sell him for 20 shekels of gold, which is about 280 grams of gold. If roughly maybe $400, so a fair amount of money. So Rebekah is given these beautiful pieces of jewelry, quite heavy, quite substantial, and she goes and runs to her mother and tells her about what has happened. Her brother is Laban. We're going to meet Laban a couple times, especially in Jacob's story, which we haven't met Jacob yet. He's not been born yet. Laban is a bit greedy, if I'm honest, and the text is pretty clear about this. And when he sees the jewelry, his radar goes up. Now, Rebekah has extended hospitality for hospitality's sake at the well. Imagine, if you will, you're in a desert. There's not a McDonald's at the corner or a Starbucks or a gas station where you can get fresh water or a sandwich. You're dependent upon the community for those resources and the substance. That is what Rebekah offered. Once she sees him, she extends this gorgeous hospitality. I think there's a beautiful lesson there for all of us yet today, that as men and women of God, we too should be extending hospitality without necessarily assessing the individual, whether they're worthy of it or not. Laban, on the other hand, does that. He assesses this chief servant and decides that this person is worth hospitality. The chief servant explains why he's there. He's looking for a wife for his master. They know Abraham. Abraham would have been second cousins to Rebekah, who will become Isaac's wife. And so the deal is made, if you will. and Rebekah is going to go home with the chief servant. As they approach, she sees him. She sees Isaac. He sees her. She covers herself because that would have been the tradition. And they become husband and wife. We don't have a lot of details about the ceremony, but we know that they become husband and wife. It's interesting because in the last verse of the 24th chapter, it says that Isaac took Rebekah and she became his wife and he loved her. That's wonderful, right? When we can love our spouses. This is an arranged marriage, so it's not a guarantee that there will be love. And it says, Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. There is a sense scholars believe that Isaac really took the death of his mother hard. It's mentioned twice in the passage, kind of at the beginning it's mentioned, and now here at the end. We're going to then see, I'm going to just jump a couple pages. You're going to hear me turning maybe my pages in my Bible, and we're going to see that Rebekah, like her mother-in-law, her deceased mother-in-law, Sarah, is also barren. However, it's a little different this time. Sarah waits 25 years for the birth of Isaac. Rebekah's barrenness is resolved in just a couple verses. Isaac prays, and then the next thing we know, she conceives. And she conceives twins. The interesting thing about these twins and about her pregnancy is it's a rough pregnancy. They are fighting, the Bible says, in her womb. They struggle to be firstborn, secondborn. She goes to the Lord and inquires why this is happening, which is interesting because there's this kind of this innate ability to be with Abraham, Abraham's God, if you will. And the Lord speaks to her and says to her that there are two nations in her womb, two peoples born of her that will be divided. One shall be stronger than the other. The elder, the firstborn, shall serve the younger. Sure enough, when they're born, because of the struggle, a little hand comes out and the midwife ties a little bit of string around it or a ribbon so that they know which child was first. It is Esau that is born first. Esau will be the father, the father of the Arab nation. He is born, he's hairy, he's rugged, he's kind of that man's man. He's a hunter, he's a fisher. He's the eldest. And the younger twin is Jacob. Jacob, who is fair-skinned, maybe even light-haired, which would have been unusual. They would have been more dark-haired, dark-skinned, maybe even lighter eyes, it's believed by some scholars. And these two will proceed to argue and fight and deceive, especially Jacob. He will be a deceiver for the rest of their lives until God gets a hold of Jacob. Esau will be a man who hunts. He will be his father's favorite, and Jacob will be Rebekah's favorite. We are going to see that these two cannot honor one another. And part of the reason modern psychology would tell us is that because their parents didn't honor the boys equally, the boys don't honor one another equally, which is tragic. We see it still today in families. We will find that Jacob and Esau will separate. Esau will sell his birthright for a bowl of soup, a bowl of stew, if you will. He's been out hungry. He's been out hunting and he's hungry. And he comes in, his brother's been cooking, and Jacob tricks him, if you will, negotiates with him to get his birthright. This is a big deal in this time. That means all that the family is goes to the one who holds the birthright. So the firstborn gets the birthright typically. Esau sells it for a bowl of soup to his brother Jacob. The final tricks that happens here is that Jacob then goes into the father and even gets the final blessing. Isaac is dying and he believes, because he's been tricked, his eyesight is failing, and he feels the sun, he feels Jacob, and he's hairy, but he's hairy because he's wearing some fur from an animal, a deceased animal. And his mother and Jacob trick the father into the blessing, and then Rebekah realizes how dangerous this is, and Jacob flees for his life. And guess where he goes? He goes to Laban, Rebekah's brother. So he goes to his uncle. And that's where we'll end. We're going to stop there. We'll pick that story up in the next one, and we'll see what happens to Jacob. But I'll give you a hint. Jacob becomes Israel. From him we will have the 12 tribes of Israel. This is what the whole story is about, what the Old Testament is about. As you think about this today, as you leave this, I invite you just to take a moment and see what settles in your being from what you've heard today. Maybe you're a Jacob. Maybe you're an Esau. Maybe God's inviting you to live more honestly and more truthfully and stop trying to trick people. Maybe you need to get honest with yourself. Whatever it is, I just pray that these words will help you strengthen your faith, deepen your roots in God. Thank you for being here today. Bye-bye.